Alrighty, well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrew Doffney. I'm the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at the New Jersey State Library, and it is my pleasure to present our speaker today, Paul Cecala, who is a certified global career development facilitator, work search author, and founder of Cecala Career Consultants. Since 1999, he has assisted over 3,000 job seekers, ranging from C-suite executive to college students. Paul specializes in creating job search project plans and is recognized for his empathetic listening skills. Paul currently facilitates job seeker networking groups for 4 different organizations. He has helmed the adult professional education programs for 2 colleges and a New Jersey Department of Labor one-stop career center. Paul has his BS in psychology from Florida Institute of Technology. He has also published a book and numerous articles on career coaching in a variety of publications. So welcome, Paul. Thanks again for presenting for us.
Thank you. And you'll get me to share now?
In 1 second.
Okay.
Before we jump into Paul's presentation, I just have a few housekeeping items that I want to go over. First and foremost, we will be taking your questions throughout the program. So if you have any questions, just please submit them using the Q&A or the chat, and we'll address them as they come in. There is a survey available at the end of the webinar, so if you have time, we ask you please complete the survey. We always appreciate any of the feedback. And if you want some more information on advancing your career, this is Paul's website for Cecala Career Consultants. So you can go there and visit it and find out some more information on different things and services that Paul offers. One last thing is I just want to do a brief overview of the Zoom dashboard. This is what your dashboard should look like if you're using a PC or a Mac. If you're using a mobile device, the dashboard may look a little bit different, but all the features will still be there. First and foremost, in the bottom left corner, you'll see your audio settings. So if you're using an external listening device, like a headset or earbuds, you can check to make sure that they are connected properly there. At any point during the presentation, if you run into any issues, there is a raise hand button in the middle. You can click on that and that'll alert me. I will send you a message in Zoom and hopefully be able to resolve any problems that you are having. And as I mentioned, if you do have any questions, there is the Q&A or the chat buttons. You can use either one of them to get in touch with myself or Paul. So that is everything that I have for you. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to Paul now.
Fantastic. Thank you. And we'll go to presentation mode here. There we go. Now just give me another second, folks. I want to get all of my stuff set up here. There we are. All right, now I can see everything that you all will put into the chat and the questions, and Andrew's going to follow along if I miss something in the question and answer. So we're going to talk about resumes and some of the current trends in resume writing. What I'm doing is using some slides from a presentation or a part of a training program that I do. And this program is actually going to be presented at the Princeton Adult School this fall. It's a master class in the job search process methodology. And so let's go ahead and take a look at the specifics. In fact, I want to just get through a bunch of these, keep going here, come on. Am I not advancing? There we go. Let me just stop here for a second, because one of the key aspects of resume writing is to make sure that the information you present is exactly what the hiring manager needs to see and hear. Right? So we need to talk in terms of our success stories, and your success stories should take on this format when you're telling them to people, whether it's in an interview or a networking. You want to talk about the challenge, the action, the results that you garnered, or the problem, the action results, maybe the situation, task, action results. The idea is the same for all of them. On your resume, we want to take that result statement followed by a primary action step, and that's what becomes your bullet. So if you think about all of the accomplishments that you've had, specifically in your work life, but especially throughout your entire life, then you can create the result statements and the action statements that you'll put on your resume as your bullets. Now, let me give you just one quick example of that. A client of mine had on her resume 4 words: experience with Access databases. And I asked her to give me the story behind that experience. took her 15 minutes to describe it. Now, if we were doing more about interviews and storytelling, I'd share that story with you, but I'd be able to do it in less than 2 minutes. Based on what she told me, this is the bullet we ended up putting on her resume. Save the company $1.5 million annually by creating a 100-field access database with 25 micro programs to analyze the data. Now, who would you hire? Experience with access databases or save the company 1.5 million, blah, blah, blah. The goal behind that is you want to wow the reader to the point where they say, oh my God, I need to find out more. I need to learn more from you. Tell me more about this story. And that's what we want to see happening in our resume or with our resume. So, geez, this thing does not want to work right. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to just advance past all of this because that's a part of the other presentation. And then now let's look specifically at resumes. So if you take nothing away from today's presentation, but this one thought, you will improve your entire job search process fivefold. There's no person's opinion of anything you say or do or write in your job search than the hiring manager or the hiring authorities. So we need to put ourselves in the shoes of that hiring authority with everything we do in our job search. And the better we write our resume to what that hiring authority wants to know and needs to know about us to meet their needs and their wants, their challenges, the more likely they are to want to hire us or minimally to interview us. So do your best to become the hiring manager. Now, remember, your resume is your brochure, it's your marketing material, and there truly are no rules to resume writing. There are a lot of best practices, and those tend to change, quite quickly sometimes. For example, just a year ago, we would be putting on our resume our COVID vaccination status. Today, we don't want to do that. 5 years ago, it was unheard of to use a picture as a part of your resume or your CV. With the millennials and the Gen Zs, that's becoming more common. I don't know if I like it personally, but it is something that is starting to show up on more and more resumes and CVs. So it's something we want to think about as we're writing our resume. There are no rules. There are only best practices. If you gave your resume to 5 people, I guarantee you'll get 8 results back as to what is the right way to change or adjust that resume to make it perfect. All of them are right. All of them are wrong. Your job is simply to do what you think the hiring manager most needs to know from you. So we can talk a lot about philosophy, but it's really not going to get us what we need. So let's just real quick cover a couple of key points related to the theory or philosophy behind resume writing. We just talked about it's the hiring manager, right? Keyword rich. You want to use a lot of jargon in your resume. And you want to use the jargon of the employer that you're going to, the industry that you're going to, especially if you're changing industries. We don't want to talk about our experience from the jargon of our past employer because that doesn't make sense to the new employer. So we have to rewrite things in the words that are familiar to the reader using their jargon. We want to prove everything that we say at the top of our resume in the body of our resume. So the very first things that an employer should read in your resume is either a position statement or a value statement, something that says, this is the job I'm applying for, And here's why I'm the best candidate for that job. And then everything else in your resume needs to prove what you've said right up top there. Everything should be positioning you for the job. So you may have some really amazing experience that has absolutely no value for this position. We probably want to downplay or eliminate that experience to play up the experience that does fit for this role. Prioritize the information to what's in your job description. Doesn't matter what order the headings go on your resume. And within each heading, there's limited best practices on what order things need to go. Yeah, we need to do things in reverse chronological order, but the bullets within a particular job or a description of volunteer experience or whatever it may be, you want to put those bullets in the order that best fits the needs of that hiring authority, not in the order that you think is important, in the order that they want to see it, right? Everybody says, oh my God, my resume has to be 1 page or maybe 2 pages. Length does not matter. You need to make the resume as long as it needs to be in order to give the hiring authority what they need to know. Now, shorter is always better, don't get me wrong, right? So if we can keep it to 1 page or maybe 2, that's the best option. But don't be afraid to go longer if you've got some really powerful, important, amazing experience that proves you're qualified for the job, and it takes more than 2 pages to do that. If you're writing a CV or a curriculum vitae, that actually is going to be a 4 to 8, maybe 10-page long document because it requires so much more information and so much more detail than a typical resume would require. So we'll take a look at the differences between both of them as we get a little deeper in. And we never ever want to lie on our resume. You know, it's amazing to me how many people are still giving falsehoods about their education in particular, but also some of the other details in their resume. Now, the good news is your resume is a marketing and sales document. So as long as you don't ever say, and please don't do this, see resume when you're filling out an application, your resume is not a formal legal document. But if it is a part of the resume, the application, then you have to be absolutely accurate with everything. If you're only putting information on, or if you're only using your resume as a supplemental document or a sales document, then you can embellish a little bit. You can maybe say, you know, give figures and measurements that aren't quite exactly accurate, but are absolutely realistic and believable, and that will be okay. We just can't outright lie on a resume. Any questions so far? I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A or in the chat. So we'll go ahead and move on. So here are a couple of other kind of easy, memorable kinds of mnemonics you can use to help you with your resume writing, right? Keep it short and simple. We've all heard the KISS method before, right? And the 3 ABLES. Your resume needs to be readable, understandable, and scannable. And I'm going to talk about scannability in 2 different perspectives. One is when I'm physically looking at the piece of paper, I need to be able to easily scan it and see the important information that I want to know. But the other part of scannability is we need to make it scannable for the applicant tracking system. In fact, I generally recommend we want to have a separate document that we use to upload to applicant tracking systems, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. We want to make sure that our content is always going to be that which speaks directly to that hiring manager. So we always want to have our position statement and our value statements on there. We always want to use accomplishment statements, and they need to be quantifiable. We want to talk about our expertise, not our experience, and everything needs to be in the form of action verbs. don't ever use a summary or objective. It's not only a waste of space, but not that heading just in itself, the word summary or the word objective as a heading is of no value. Instead, I like to use the title of the position that you're applying to. Now, as the reader, I know exactly what to do with your resume because I know exactly what position you're applying for. And so that's one of the places where we're going to customize our resume every time we send one out. Don't use a list of duties. You know, this is a little absurd, but it's kind of true. A janitor is a janitor is a janitor, right? In most cases, a project manager is a project manager. A teacher is a teacher. The duties and responsibilities of those jobs don't really change that much from position to position or company to company. So don't give me a list of your duties and responsibilities as the bullets on your resume, because it's not telling me what you are capable of doing. What I want to hear is what you've had for your success. What value do you bring? How are you going to do this job for me in my company in a way that nobody else can and make it better for me, right? We don't need to use nouns in general. We don't need to use, that's probably a little bit of a misnomer. We don't need to use the subjects, of sentences because it's implied. So your resume shouldn't be filled with I managed, I led, I created, I did, I, right? Just start with the word created, managed. Eliminate that subject. So there are 4 primary types of resumes. Here they are listed across the top: the chronological, the functional, the combination or hybrid, and a curriculum vitae. And the first column underneath that tells you, or row, kind of gives you who likes to use or read those kinds of resumes. Curriculum vitae are generally used in scientific or academic realms, but they can be used in other places. The HR department loves the chronological resume because they can quickly and easily see what you've done, and they can tick off all their boxes that you meet the criteria of the job. But that doesn't help the manager, because the manager wants to know that you have the skills necessary, you can perform the functions and roles of the position. So they tend to prefer a more functionally styled resume because it's easier for them to find what they want to know. So the best resume in most instances for us to use is kind of take the best of both the chronological and the functional and put it together in a hybrid or a combination style resume. And that's where you really get a lot more freedom in what you can do and how you can do it. Without reading through this entire chart, is there anything there that stands out as a question or a concern or something that specifically is of value to anybody? And I'll take a moment to wait for you to type the information into the chat or the question. Okay, not seeing anything, I'm going to move on. So let's talk about the formatting of your resume. Now, again, remember, there are no rules. So these are just some best practices. First off, we want to really keep a decent margin all the way around the resume. So I would never go less than a ½ inch. I would prefer to stay at 3/4 to an inch margin all the way around your paper for those that you're printing. We really want to use one font throughout the resume. So don't mix Calabri, Arial, Times New Roman, or any other funky fonts. Use just one font for the entire document. And typically today, Calibri or Arial are the more preferred fonts to use. Those are fonts that are known as having sans serif, right? So Times Roman is a serif or a serif font, where it's got all those little tails at the tops and the bottoms and the sides of all of the letters. today our mind does not read that as easily as it reads a very plain and simple font like Calibri or Arial. So we want to use those fonts. Generally, we want to try and stay to 12 points in terms of size. You can go down to a 10-point font, but again, you want to be pretty consistent. So I will probably make my name larger, maybe 14 or 16-point font. I'll probably put the job title in a larger font, 14 or 16 point, and then everything else in the resume is going to be the same size font at somewhere between 10 and 12-point font. Center justified, where the sides are even, is actually harder for us to read than left justified. So you want to justify everything to the left side and let the right side be a jagged edge rather than that straight line down on both sides. So left justify the resume. And your resume is typically the first thing that people see. So it needs to be perfect with grammar and spelling. Now, there are a couple of things that are specific to actually resume grammar that are different from general writing grammar. Like one thing I already mentioned, we're eliminating the subject of all of our sentences because the subject is assumed to be I. You can also eliminate things like the articles a, an, the, and typically not change the meaning of the sentence. So to save space, to use fewer words, we eliminate those whenever and wherever we can. I find a lot of my clients like to write in prepositional phrases. However, if we were to take the noun or the purpose of that preposition and put it in front of the preceding noun or verb, we can eliminate 2 or 3 words and still have the same meaning to the sentence. Right. So we want to always look at how can we be as judicious as possible with the words that we're putting on the paper and eliminate every extraneous word we can. I love to use bolding and underlining on my resume. Now, we want to keep that to no more than 10% of the total document, but the bolding and the underlining will draw the reader's eye directly to that specific word or statement that you want them to see. So if you have, for example, that bullet I gave as an example earlier, if you have a powerful metric like saved the company $1.5 million, right? Well, I probably am going to put that phrase in bold because I want the reader to see that and know that I'm the kind of person who's going to save you money. So think about where and how you can use bolding and underlining in a conservative or simple way that's going to draw the reader's attention to the information that they most need to know about you. Typically, especially in resumes that are being uploaded to the applicant tracking system, reading a table is very, very difficult. Oftentimes, if you send a Word document or a Google Docs document to someone and you use tables, those tables will get reformatted when you email it off. So to prevent that, we don't want to use tables in our resume wherever possible. Instead, create the columns by using tabs. And then we definitely want to save our document with our name as the file name. This way, when it gets to the reader, they know exactly whose resume they're reading when they open the document up. Any questions here? Okay, now that seems to be out of place. So let's just move on. Sorry about that. I'm surprised. I thought I went through this presentation earlier. So powerful bullet points, right? We want to make sure that we're using our success stories. We really don't want them to be more than 2 lines long because that gets to be too much data for the reader. We always try and do the result followed by the action, as the example that I gave you. Oh, look, I even use it in the document here. So let's take a look at a chronological resume. This is a sample chronological resume. You can see typically chronological resumes, people still use the word objective or summary at top, but they still have underneath that their position statement. Now, in today's best practices, you want to use your full name. We don't actually want to use the street address because we don't want people stalking us. So you're just going to use the state or the city and the state. You may include the zip code. Really only need to include one phone number, the one that's you're most likely to answer. So if you still have a landline and a cell phone, but the landline is used by the entire family, you probably don't want to put that on your resume. Probably want to put your cell phone on because that's the phone you're going to answer and no one else is. You definitely need to have an email address. And really today, especially if you're in a professional position versus a more labor or blue collar type position, you're going to want to have your LinkedIn address on there. And we'll see that in one of the other resumes coming up. So you can see how kind of outdated this chronological format tends to be. But we can still do some things that are going to make it a value for today, right? Use the reverse chronological order. Make sure you've got your accomplishments, not your job description. Prioritize those bullets. We can still do that. Notice how I'm using the bolding and the underlining in order to draw your attention to specific information. If you're relatively recent graduate and don't have a lot of experience, or especially a lot of relevant or related experience to the position, then you might want to do a little more of a description of your education so that people can see where and how you've got the experience you need for the job. List your certifications because that shows the value again that you're bringing. So this is a pretty standard, typical chronological resume, not really the best option for us to use today. Here's a typical functional resume. Now again, we've got our position statement up top, but then we spend a lot of time and put most of our bullets under maybe a heading of achievements or key accomplishments or skills and competencies. You can use a lot of different titles there, but notice how we've broken out by skill set or by competency the achievements that I've accomplished in each of those areas. And I have no bullets underneath my jobs. So for the hiring manager, this is great. I need somebody who can research information and analyze options. Let me see what you can do with that. Oh, wow, you know how to manage people. That's fantastic. I want to see what you can do with that. Whereas if I put it as bullets underneath each of these positions, I'd really have to read those bullets to find the ones that are most important to me. So this is why managers tend to like this. And now here is the chronological resume, or I'm sorry, the combination resume. Notice the job title right up front with that position or value statement. This person's used some key accomplishments broken down by heading. Then their work experience with some additional bullets that prove what she said up here. She's got her education. She's even included some volunteer experience. And again, we can put any headings we'd like. For example, I was working with a client just yesterday who has about 10 or 12 jobs in the last 15 years. The problem with that, of course, it feels like job hopping because he's had such short time with each job. But one of the ways we got around that was to have a section called additional relevant experience. And in that section, we only included the jobs that are more than 10 years old that relate to the position he's applying for. Some of those jobs actually went back as far as 1990. But typically, we only want to show the last 10 or 15 years experience on a resume because that's all that really is of value to people. So by going to this additional related or relevant experience section, we were able to show jobs that are more than 10 or 15 years old. We were able to eliminate jobs that were not of value. So we're not showing, 20 or 30 positions. And instead of putting the dates like this at the end on that section, we put the number of years in that role. So here would be 2 years instead of 95 to 96. We'll just say 2 years. Again, chose to expand a little bit on the education because that's showing some more value. Volunteer experience or community involvement is always a great thing. We always want to have our certifications listed on a resume, and any professional development or coursework that we've done outside of formal education. We want to include that as well because we want to give the reader all the information that's important to them. But again, it's the information important to them. Prior to getting into career services and career coaching, which I've done for the last 25 years, I did almost 15 years in corporate aviation. I have my commercial pilot's license with an instrument rating. Well, that's not on my current resume because it is of no value to the organizations that I'm applying to. Now, if I were to apply, say, to a college or an institution that focused specifically on aviation careers, maybe then I would put that information on there because it would be of interest and value to those readers. But for general people, most positions I'm applying to, it's not necessary, so I leave it off. Oh, we went backwards. And then here's a curriculum vitae. This one happens to be a very short one. We kept it to 2 pages, but notice some of the differences. So first off, the position stays right up top, but then especially in an academic setting, you're going to always follow with your education. This case, we put the teaching experience in, research experience, all the publications that the person has been published in, presentations they've done, right? Look at all the different kinds of headings that would go into a curriculum vitae. And if you've been teaching or in research for 10 or 15 years, you'll probably have 10 or 15 published articles. You'll probably have done presentations to multiple professional association meetings that you'll need to list out. So all of these headings are things that could go into your chronological or hybrid resume if you have those issues and want to share them, but they don't have to. In a research or academic resume, a curriculum vitae, you're going to definitely include all of those things. So any questions on the differences in the types of resumes and when and how we would use them? All right, so let's look at this scannable resume, the one that you're going to upload to the automatic or the applicant tracking system. And it needs to be a very different looking, feeling resume than the one you're creating to hand to people or email to people. So what I generally suggest to my clients is you create your formal resume, the one you're going to hand out. Make it as pretty as you'd like. I'm seeing more and more people use grayed out or colored sections. I'm seeing more and more people put some graphics on their resumes. I don't always recommend that. I think it depends on the role that you're applying to, but you can do those things. The scannable resume, the one that you are going to upload to an applicant tracking system, needs to be very simple, very plain, no formatting of any kind. And I'll explain that a little bit more. But first I want to talk about when do you use the scannable resume? So you've gone online and you're applying to a position. And before you start to fill out the application, the applicant tracking system is saying, upload your resume now. And it auto-populates or fills out much of the application for you. But I bet if you're like a lot of my clients and me, truthfully, about 10 years ago, you do that, and then you have to go back and refill out half of the fields because the applicant tracking system took the information from the wrong place in your resume to put into the application. So our goal with the scannable resume, the uploadable resume, is to create a document that the applicant tracking system can easily use. So here are some of the things we have to do. First off, generally, I recommend using a plain text format. If you use a Word document, but you include no formatting in it, then you could use a Word document. What I'll do is take the Word document that we've created as the beautiful resume we're handing out, and then save a second copy of it in plain text or .txt. That strips out all the formatting. So it's faster and easier for me then to go in and just make some minor changes to it so that it fits the applicant tracking system. If you're going to use, where we use a lot of keywords, we want to put a lot of white space around them so that the applicant tracking system can find them easily. We need to use simplified text, no italics, no bolding. The bullets need to be just a plain, simple dot or the asterisk key when we're creating bullets. Anything else is going to throw the applicant tracking system off. We can't, when we're using an uploaded document, have any information in the header or the footer of the Word document, because the applicant tracking system's either not going to read it, or it's going to read the header information and then see that as the end of the page and then create a new page with all the rest of the information, and then create another page with any information in the footer. So we have to eliminate those page breaks, and the way to do that is just not to put information in the header or the footer. And then you're going to save your resume in a TXT or RTF format, still again using your name as a part of the file name. So let's look at what that's going to look like. Right? So here's a plain text format. Notice that all the header information, my contact information, is one line for each item, and they're underneath each other. And then I have a space, the header professional experience, or the title professional experience. And then notice the order that the experience information is listed. I start with the company and then the company's location. Then I put in the title and then the dates. Most applicant tracking systems are looking for those 3 or 4 pieces of information in that order. So we want to put it in that order on our plain text resume. What might happen is if you put, let's say, the title first and then followed it with the company name, you'll find that your title is in the company name block, and the company name is in the title field of the resume. So if you see that kind of a thing happening consistently when you're applying to an applicant tracking system, it means we need to go and change the format of the information so that it's in the correct order for the applicant tracking system. And then the bullets are underneath that. Notice these are generally all asterisks. That's typically what will happen with the plain text or rich text format. Also notice the order of the headings. Applicant tracking systems, typically the first information they need is your experience. Then they want to see your education. And then they may have space for other stuff. And so you need to give the information in that same order when you upload it to the applicant tracking system. Notice this one actually has continuing education or professional development separate from their education, and it lists it in the same way. and then finishes with the areas of expertise. Now, you upload this resume to the applicant tracking system. Then you're going to go through the application and make sure all the data is correctly formatted in the right field, etc. Then when you're finished, oftentimes the applicant tracking system will then ask, would you like to attach a file? At that point, you can then attach your more formal and pretty visually, appealing resume from your Word document format, or better than that, even a PDF. You can attach the PDF. You can attach your cover letter, right? You're not uploading it. So it's very different terminology. At the beginning of the application, you're going to upload. At the end, you're going to attach. When you upload at the beginning, it's the rich text format or the plain text format. At the end, when you attach, you're attaching your Word document or a PDF. Want to be real clear on that because it can be kind of tricky for some folks. So here are some of the key points that we covered today. Right to the hiring manager's point of view and their wants and needs. Keep it simple and short. Make it readable, understandable, scannable. Use accomplishments and result statements. Format it the way that best fits the reader. Determine which version or type of resume is most appropriate for the job you're applying to, whether it's chronological function combination, or if you need a CV. Then create that resume and also make sure you have your scannable resume. As a little bit of a bonus, I'll just throw in here a little bit about cover letters. There are a bunch of different types of cover letters. The key here is you want the cover letter to help sell you into the job. So make sure that it's not really giving new or different information, but helping the reader to find the information on your resume that they need to know. Some people will make the cover letter more of the story of their career, or they'll do this T-style letter where you have two columns, literally, and the one side, usually the left side, has all of the bullets of what the employer is looking for in the job description. And then the right side matches bullet for bullet. Here's the way I meet that experience, or I have that expertise. So you go bullet for bullet down like that. Can be a very powerful cover letter if you want to use one. And there's some additional resources on cover letters. So, by the way, I do run a bunch of job seeker support groups. These are some of the ones that I run. If you're interested in any of those, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to make those available to you. And then that's my contact information on the left. That was my co-teacher for this program on the right. With that, Andrew, I think I'm done for today. If there are any questions anybody has. And by the way, let me go ahead and put my contact information into the chat so everybody has it there as well.
All right, thank you so much, Paul. If anybody does have any questions, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function, and we'll be happy to address them.
And while we're doing that, I'm going to, Andrew, ask everybody, I would love if you would put into the chat the one or two most important takeaway that you've gotten from today's presentation. So if everybody would maybe give us one word or phrase, what are you taking away from today's presentation, and type that into the chat. That would be really great. I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off.
No, that's okay. Comment on the when you said don't lie on your resume. I think something that I've learned is that if it's on your resume or if it's in your cover letter, be prepared to talk about it.
Absolutely.
So everything is fair game.
You're absolutely right. And you know, the Society for Human Resources Management it does every 3 to 5 years they'll do a survey on information related to job search. And to this day, people are still lying about their education on a resume, which means they ultimately, you know, are going to get found out, because most employers today are requiring that you provide a copy of your transcript to prove any education. Thanks, Patricia. The tips about tracking system styles, great. The T-style cover letter, excellent. Mary, key points for formatting, fantastic. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
We've had people in the past. I was wondering maybe if you could speak to any other what they call tips or tricks to beat the applicant tracking system. You know, there's been things that people have been doing to try and beat them. Any suggestions on how to kind of get through that part of it?
Yeah, the number one way to beat the applicant tracking system is to network into the job. I got to say that. Sorry, but that's the truth. You know, statistically, only 10% of people who found work by applying online. 90% of people who found work find it because they have networked into the position. They've talked to another human being. That could be 40% of the time they go directly to the employer. 35% of the time they talk to friends and family who know people at the employer. 15% of the time it's talking to the recruiters. But I know that doesn't answer your actual question, right? And so the answer to your question in terms of how can I get the best possible results out of an applicant tracking system is to, number one, upload the right resume in the right format. So you need to actually make sure that the application has the correct information in the correct field after you upload your resume. Number two, you need to make sure that your application shows you meet the primary requirements that are listed in the job description. So if the job description says you need to have 7 years experience, your application really needs to be able to show how you meet that 7-year experience requirement. Now, there are a bunch of different ways you can do something like that, but the applicant tracking system is ticking off boxes. Do you have this qualification? Do you meet that experience? And if the answer is no, the applicant tracking system is going to put you aside. If the answer is yes, then it's going to push you forward. Now, please be clear. I'm not telling you to lie on the application, because that applicant tracking system application is a legal document, and you are held liable to every piece of information you put in there. And those are fireable offenses if you lie on your application. So don't do that. But at the same time, you really do need to make sure you meet all of the requirements of the position. Is that helpful?
I think so. I don't see any questions, so I think you did a fantastic job. So
If you would like a truncated version of this presentation, anyone, just feel free to reach out to me, and I will be happy to provide the slides to you. And I promise I'll clean it up so it doesn't have all the extraneous stuff in there. But love to hear from you, and would be more than happy to share the information in that way.
all right. Thanks so much, Paul, for coming and speaking to our audience again, and thank you, audience, for attending. You make our programming worthwhile, and we hope that everybody got something out of it that you can take with you as you all kind of move forward in your own career paths. So once again, thank you, Paul, and thank you everybody for attending. Be safe, be well, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Have a great weekend, all.